Houston today is no stranger to new urbanist shopping centers. In the past few years, one has popped up in seemingly every corner of the metro area, from the Woodlands to Sugar Land. But one such development came decades before the trend, and today, most of it's gone. Tucked away in southwest Houston, Westbury Square was built in 1962 as the darling child of developer Ira Byrne. Byrne had spent extensive time in Italy to combat hay fever, and was determined to bring the ambiance and intimacy of small Italian towns to Houston's recently developed Westbury subdivision. Architect William J. Wortham Jr. was commissioned to bring Byrne's vision to life. The development was centered on a large open plaza with a fountain in the center. From there, streets and alleyways spoked outwards, providing access from the parking lot. 1- and 2-story buildings lined the square and the streets. Westbury was more than just a shopping center. It was a faux Italian civic magnet, an idyllic small town dropped into the freeway era. Though many shopping centers sprang up around Houston during this time, Westbury was unlike any other. The feel was whimsical, almost like a theme park. Although the shopping center itself was only 7.5 acres, it inspired an entire neighborhood of development. Most notably was the adjacent Westbury Square townhomes. A whimsical pastiche theme carried into this complex with ornamental facades and landscaped alleys, and even into surrounding office and apartment buildings. The internal landscaped streets of the townhome complex connected directly to a street in Westbury Square, forming a continual pedestrian path through this live-shop wonderland. Westbury's role as a de facto town center wasn't limited to an aesthetic one. From the grand opening onward, events were used to keep visitors engaged. Stores included an array of local and chain shops, including novelty shops like an ice cream and candy parlor. Kids would bike from the surrounding subdivisions to buy ice cream and meander through the plaza. The square's prosperity endured for nearly a decade before newer shopping centers, namely the Galleria just 15 minutes away, began to siphon off visitors. The Galleria changed the game and revolutionized destination shopping in Southeast Texas. Westbury, absent of air-conditioned corridors and anchor shops, began to lose tenants. It was not on a major freeway like most malls were, and as time went on, the neighborhoods around it began to lose the prestige they had once held. The oil bust of the 1980s hit Houston hard across the board, and Westbury never recovered. The original developer went bankrupt towards the end of the decade, and in a subsequent real estate deal, almost half of the complex was bought and demolished for the construction of a Home Depot. The elaborate central plaza was bisected by a delivery drive, and the fountain area was demolished. Through all this, Westbury maintained a handful of offbeat and often transient tenants, including an antique shop, a Christian bookstore, and later a smoke shop. A nonprofit theater company used a building across what had once been the plaza. One pedestrian street and a small portion of the central plaza remained. The demise continued in 2014 when the city made the owners tear down several of the more dilapidated buildings under a fix-or-demolish order. 2 years ago, the property was sold again, this time to another developer. The new owner intends to tear it down, at least what's left of it. For better or worse, today it remains. The theater company left after the sale, and there are no permanent retail tenants left. A handful of people live on the property in some of the better-kept buildings. A pop-up coffee shop food truck operates regularly out of the parking lot near the arched entryway. The condition of the buildings has worsened in recent years. The demolition for the Home Depot left some buildings with their interiors exposed, and a lack of basic maintenance for years has really accumulated. Still, the vision of the space endures. Today it exists as somewhat of a ruin, a crumbling Italian town in the parking lot of a Home Depot. The intricate facades that line the streets show their imported character, now with weeds protruding through the floors and the roofs caving in. Oddly enough, the condo complex remains occupied and well-maintained. This was built on an adjacent but separate piece of property, and was not subject to the fate of the retail center. At some point, the Owners Association fenced off their once connected street to the square. The very place that had led to the creation of the complex was now more of a risk and a burden than an attraction. Officially, the plan for the square is still to tear it down, and it could happen soon. The article announcing its demolition dates back several years. Most of the buildings are beyond saving, and even so, the needs of this area are very different now than they were when Westbury Square was built. Westbury's fate is likely sealed, but for now, it remains a ruin hidden in plain sight.